made rich by the sunshine and lush by the rains. Say a gem light and fair between mountains and seas. Your children salute you, dear land of the free, land of Guyana. Our heroes of yore, both bondsmen and free, laid their bones on your shore. This soil so they hallowed, and from them are we, all sons of one mother, Guyana, the great land of Guyana, diverse though our strains, we're born of their sacrifice, heirs of their pains, and ours is the glory.
Hello and welcome to you all from wherever you're joining us to Nation Watch. Today is the 7th of January 2024. It's the first Sunday of January, first Sunday of 2024. We move closer and closer to regional and national elections, and we maintain our call for a clean voters list as we approach elections. Our country is in crisis. I don't know if a Happy New Year is an appropriate wish, but I do pray God's blessings on all of us, wherever we may be, as we move on through. Today, we'll be looking to 2024, and with me in studio here at Congress Place is Mr. Aubrey Compton Norton, MP, leader of the People's National Congress Reform and leader of the opposition, who is taking time off to join us. Welcome, sir.
Well, let me start by saying Happy New Year to all Guyanese. I've chosen to wish them all the best rather than Happy New Year because I'm not so sure it's going to be happy. Let me say thanks for having me.
Mr. Norton, straight down to business as always. In 2023, there was a substantive budget and I believe 3 supplementals. In 2023, there was a national vote of in excess of 900 billion Guyana dollars. But in that package of 900 billion Guyana dollars plus, the People's Progressive Party government could only find 5 million Guyana dollars to deal with 5 billion Guyana dollars to deal with the cost of living, to bring ease, to bring relief to the people of this country, the public servants of this country, and could only find space for 6.5% salary and wage increase for the public sector workers. Speak to this issue of the government's approach to our public service, to our citizenry generally, as it relates to the budgetary vote and who's getting what out of this, since pots remain, almost empty across the country.
The life of the ordinary Guyanese has gotten worse under the PPP. The budget is the means by which you allocate resources. And when you look at the resources allocated to the working man, you will recognize that the government has no interest in ordinary people. You mentioned the 6.5 wage increase. Now, the 6.5 wage increase is a clear indication that they have no interest in getting people out of poverty. because they know full well that 6.5% is next to nothing. Compared against the rate of inflation, it is ridiculous. Compared against the kind of income we're getting from oil and gas, it is ridiculous. But the government's approach is a very sinister one. They try to say that if you put money into workers, etc., then you will fuel inflation. Now, it doesn't necessarily follow because, like we've said, under the APNU AFC, you got more than 70% wages increase and you didn't have inflation.
Nor did you have oil.
Yeah. When you had the Armstrong Award, you got more than that and it didn't fuel inflation. So the argument is flawed, but it is coming from Barrett Jackdale, who really is no economist. He's a chap who, when you raise the real substantive issues, he preferred to attack people personally and abuse. That is why he ended up looking like a fool against Elson's law comment that you could be paid from the interest on the natural resource fund. Now, the government clearly, it does not intend to improve the lives of our people because we have been making many recommendations in terms of what could happen to help the Guyanese people. We have said the ordinary worker, the low to middle income worker, if you take the threshold for income tax to 150 or 200,000, right away there is increased disposable income. And mind you, when they give the 6.5%, they tax it. So it's not 6.5% in the sense of what people are carrying home. They taxed it. But if they were serious, they could have moved the income tax threshold. It is my hope that in this budget, they heed our advice and carry it to a minimum of 150,000 Ghana dollars, which will result in some amount of real income for the average person. But then let's look at the inflation argument. If you're fueling inflation by putting money into the system, how do you explain the billions you are spending on infrastructure? More than 45%, which is putting money. The only difference is that it is putting money into the hands of a few PPP elite friends and favorites. But nevertheless, it is money into the economy. And so what it shows is that their interest is only in the set of people getting wealthy. And this thing cuts across ethnicity because a large percent of the Indo-Guyanese community, a large percent of the Afro-Guyanese, a large percent of the indigenous community, all of them are facing very hard times because the resources from oil and gas, they are not meeting the people. And once they are not meeting the people, poverty will increase while the likes of Jagdeo and the elite of the PPP enjoy themselves and have a nice time. Another indication that really they are not serious about helping the common man. When they came to power in 2020, Winston Jordan, as finance minister, in dealing with wage increases, had developed a formula in which if you were at the bottom of the scale, you got a higher percentage. And the higher up you go, you got a lower percentage, which meant the small man, in this case, would have had a substantive increase because of the percentage. Those 500,000, between 500,000 and say 800,000 would have had less, and those above would have gotten more. But when you look at what is happening now, the average man, when he gets his 6.5%, for the year he wouldn't make $100,000. But the average minister, me as opposition leader who gets a minister's salary, end up getting hundreds of thousands of dollars. And therefore, you will see that they are calculated in a calculative way, making those who have get more and those who don't. And I'm not saying that minister, senior person mustn't get money. I'm saying the people that need more money are the people at the bottom. And rather than give all of us across the board, I'm to have the calculations done to show how much those gaining, working for 800,000 and above, how much they are getting, as against those who working for 100,000 and below. And if you use a progressive approach in which you give a larger increase to those at the bottom and a smaller increase to those at the top, you'll be in a better position. Let's say somebody is working for $100,000 a month. 10% increase for them is $10,000, right? Somebody working for $1 million, 10% increase for them is 100,000. You are widening the gap. And that is why in my New Year's Day message, I made it very, very clear that the average man has nothing to be happy about. We can only wish him the best with this paltry sum that the PPP is giving out.
I want to take you back to your New Year's message and ask you to expand a bit on a number of things you said. Now, to begin with, this increase for public servants is below 1% of 2023's national budget. So it speaks to all the issues you just addressed. In your New Year's message, you said, and I'm quoting here, on the economic front, the cost of living kept surging as real incomes declined, poverty and inequality increased. You went on to say that despite these hardships in 2023, the PPP government showed no urgency, no capacity, no concern to ease the burden on the people. These are factual observations. Comment briefly on them as you address your alternative measures as leader of the opposition when your political outfit gets back into government at the next election.
The major problem, or the two major problems confronting our people are, one, the high cost of it, which is extreme, and the poverty that accompanies it. The government has proposed no measures or accepted no measures to deal with the economic reality on the ground. We made a number of recommendations that the government could have looked at. When you give somebody 6.5%, they really can't send their child to school. We have said that across this country, there is need for 2 hot meals, especially to the children of lower income parents. Because it is well established in research that children who don't have the requisite nutrition, they do not do well in school. And to the extent that you continue to not give their parents the resources, and they are malnourished, then the government is perpetuating that situation where our children will underperform. And so we have set for them a government under the APNU will ensure that you get 2 hot meals. You get a proper breakfast and a lunch. Now that will impact the income of the parent directly, because that parent now doesn't have to face that burden. So that increases the parent disposable income. We showed under David Granger that you can care for children by providing buses, boats, bicycles, etc. for children to go to school. Many children cannot go to school because their parents lack the resources to pay their transportation. I was in the Pomeroon. Well, after I went to the Pomeroon and I spoke, the next week they sent a boat for them. But they had allowed the boat given by David Granger to deteriorate. And what happened is a large percentage of the children in the Pomeroon could not go to school because it ranged, it's $2,000 a day. $1,000 to send them, $1,000 to bring them back. So you are talking about poor families paying $10,000 a week to get one child to school. Some of them have 3, some of them have 4. Now, what I'm saying is that if the government was caring and had an interest in dealing with poverty, a proper school transportation system, which we said we will produce for the people of this country, would impact positively. In fact, the government has parked a lot of those buses, destroyed many of them. We see the government believes that when we make them dependent on a handout, then we will control them. Their interest is not in the development of the children and them realizing their academic and other potential. Their sole purpose is control and domination. And so they take our resources, they keep it in vehicles. And when they meet people who play in the game to the PPP, they distribute it, 250, etc. But they are not tackling the problems of poverty and the high cost of living. The high cost of living in certain regions is a function of the absence of a government's plan to ensure increased agricultural production in those areas. And once those communities are not producing, then what happens is that they have to import vegetables, fruits, etc. into the community, which carries up the cost. If, however, government in a structured way encourages agriculture, like I've said, in Region 1, parts of Region 4, Region 7, 8, 9, and 10, you will have more agricultural production, and there will be more goods and services out there. So when you put the money in the economy, there wouldn't be high inflation because there are goods to absorb the resources. So you have to deal with increased production while at the same time putting the resources into the hands of our people. And so you are not seeing that approach. Their approach is to give a critic billions of dollars, incompetent as hell. His only claim to fame is basically asking Jagdu the questions he wants to hear. And so you are not looking at running a government in the interest of people and ensuring that the people develop. And that is what I mean when I say it has gotten worse on the economic front. And the government itself is not doing anything of consequence to ensure it improves the lives of the people. Another area in which you're seeing their incompetence, they seem to believe this solution to health problems is building hospitals. What sense it makes if the hospitals you have aren't functioning properly? They don't have the drugs at their disposal, and you run in to build more hospitals.
Which brings me to another question flowing from your New Year's message. And again, I quote from that message. You said that last year alone, the PPP spent close to $900 billion. I believe it's in excess of $900 billion. That is almost $1 trillion. Yet, our country ranks among the worst on a range of human development or quality of life indicators. Ghana remains among the worst countries in which to live in terms of maternal and infant death, life expectancy, child poverty, food security, youth unemployment, and educational standards. In addition to this excerpt from that presentation, there has been an ongoing national debate on University of Ghana and the return to free education. Expand for our viewers, please, sir, if you will, your alternative policies. And I ask this question against the backdrop of the fact that you have been advocating and putting on the table there very aggressively, if I may add, a people-centered developmental policy agenda. And within recent times, I note that the People's Progressive Party has attempted to describe their own policy as people-centered. So against that backdrop, expand for our viewers, please, your alternative policies.
One has to recognize that development is based on human development. The government does not focus its resources on humans, except they are seeking cheap political points. You will find them going into communities, giving money, giving this, giving that. But again, when it comes to a structured approach to human development, the education budget for 2023 was lower than 2022.
And the budget was more than
doubled, tripled the previous budget. What that says, and this is FNRE having promised that the UN it will be increased. It didn't. What it says is that you are not focused on the development of people. Any child knows that in the absence of wealth, if you're born into wealth or you win the lotto or something, one of the best roads to emancipation is education. And to the extent you are not promoting educational development in a broad-based way, you are seeking to keep people in poverty. And that we object to. Now, food security. Here are these jokers running around the Caribbean talking about developing food security and the head in food security. And food for our children is insecure. Many children cannot eat. Their parents cannot afford to feed them. And therefore, you talk about food security is idle talk. One of the first things, if you want to guarantee food security, is to have the production of these foods. To the extent that they limit the resources they put in agriculture to PPP control regions, that means clearly that they are not interested in developing the people. We have argued, and I've argued, that we will pursue sustainable regions, sustainable communities, meaning all the regions, all the communities, or groups of the communities, some of them might be too small to be sustainable, but the regions and communities should have the economic activities to make them sustainable and to help contribute to the reduction in the cost of food. And so we will have, like I said, an expanded agricultural program in which you put agriculture in each region, you increase the output from the Ghana School of Agriculture and the University of Ghana so that you can have more technical people in those communities to help people in agriculture. Because agriculture, it will transcend and go way beyond oil. Oil is temporary. And all we do have got to create the basis for an expanded economy after oil. I saw Jack Neo talking a set of nonsense again. But if you pay these monies, then it wouldn't be sustainable after oil. It will not be sustainable after oil if you mismanage Guyana like you are doing. However, if you manage Guyana in such a way that industries are expanding, that the non-oil sector begins to contribute as much or more than the oil sector, then you will have an expanding economy that in the post-oil era can sustain the wages and salaries you pay. I give you a practical example. They have a tourism ministry. I don't know if it does any research on tourism. But if we put money into our health sector, we can become involved in health tourism because it will be cheaper for a lot of Guyanese in the diaspora to come here, do surgery, do the things they need. But what that demands is you invest in a quality health system which has the materials and the human resource to deliver quality health care. In that circumstance, a number of things will happen. One, a lot of the Guyanese overseas who get the pension would want to come home and live and spend it because many of them believe Guyana is a better place to be. But the problem they have is the absence of health facilities. And so with the absence of health facilities, they worry if they take sick, then they have to rush back to the United States. So the government, if it had brain power, would recognize that health could become critical to the tourism sector and all other sectors, because if you have a proper health system, people will feel comfortable and want to come, including people in tourism. Let's assume they're talking about ecotourism. If a snake bites somebody at some ecotourist center in the Rupununi, you got to get them to let them, rather than have the mechanisms to ensure that that person can be treated. The last time I was in the Rupununi, they had to be rushing somebody from one community to let them to get treatment. Now, the government does not see anything in a holistic way. They do not have a plan. Like I said in my budget presentation, they flick and they hope they land on the foot. But most times there's land on their head. So we need to deal with that. The question of youth and child poverty. Unless you develop programs for young people that will allow them to become involved in business, to develop the skills in entrepreneurship. When we were in government, we used to do a financial literacy and small business management program. And there are many young people now who are involved in business that emerged from those programs. You have a minister, youth, sports, and culture who is a joke, a complete joke. There is no plan for youth and sport in this country. You put up a couple lights, you fix a couple ground, but it is so stupid. After he went into the parliament and said that a lot of the people ain't got the competence to manage the ground, etc., so the government got to take it over. It will get worse. The government is incompetent without handling cricket grounds, etc. If the boy had one iota of brain power, he would have known that the solution is to train people to manage sports facilities. This country train a number of people in sport who are idle in the ministry, who don't get anything to do because the minister and the ministry lack the professional competence to utilize professional people to develop sport. And so even in the basic for youth, aren't they? We come now to Eugene. Why do you have to phase in free education at the university? You don't need to. Forbes Burnham, without oil resources, I think from 1975 or 76, delivered free education from nursery to university. The PPP came in 1994 and abolished free education at the university. Now you have oil resources that you could put into that university. You have to phase it in. You know why they want to phase it in? They believe that if you give free education, a lot of qualified professionals will come out, and more they will be seen as incompetent and can't manage anything. That is why in a lot of the ministries, they are putting their cronies rather than professionals. We will never be able to manage the oil sector under the PPP because they are not prepared to train and engage people with the competence to do it. You have a joker called Jack Dale running all around the place like if he's some oil czar. But you get nothing of substance out of him. And like I've pointed out, it's not that the world doesn't know, every project the man touches fails. Gas to shore is likely to fail because you choose the national failure to put them in charge. You should have learned from Skeldon. You should have learned from the fiber optic cable. You should have learned from the fact that when he managed this economy, it never saw significant growth. And so you have as your czar one who is void of professional training, one who is incompetent, and one who can only abuse out when an intellectual challenge is made. Because things intellectual is not his bag. He believes in raw power, like how he cussing up and abusing and he want to charge Rickford Burke. If people who are charged for crime are charged, I don't think Jack Duke could be a free man. So when he's speaking, you have to leave him alone. We are outlining a people-centered development strategy because we believe the resources from oil and gas, they are not meeting the people. And it is the people that they must meet. And that is why we start talking about a people-centered development strategy. But don't forget, Irfan Ali and the PPP are not known for any new idea. People seem to forget that we started to talk about One Guyana, of course, in a different context, PNCR One Guyana.
And we served.
And at the same time, we also kept in focus One People, One Nation, One Destiny. So it's not new. It's just that it is a partisan. A man who is allocating the resources in an unfair way, telling you about One Guyana, while he isolates most of Ghana in the interest of the few. So I'm not surprised now that he's talking about people-centered development strategy. When I became leader of the opposition, we did our research, we saw the concept that existed, and we decided that we are going to develop a people-centered development strategy that is geared towards Guyana. Now, the first thing is Ashley came in the parliament and said, oh, it existed long. All of these theories existed long. It's very difficult for you to come up with a new theory except it's information technology and new areas. But generally, in terms of the developmental focus, we choose to use people-centered development. The clear manifestation of an absence of ideas is what caused Irfan Ali to now talking about people-centered development strategy. We have given them many proposals to think of the people-centered development strategy. I notice he now saying that they are going to forgive the debt of university students. We have been saying that for the longest while, that we will forgive the debt, Lord, the debt on the loans. But they didn't respond. I think now they recognize that the students at the university and people are accepting a lot of our position. They are running to do it. But I say, go ahead and do it. The world knows that it is our idea and that we were saying it long, and they weren't prepared to do it. So I'm not worried about them running to do these things. I mean, he went to Linden. They went to sign an agreement for the Wismar Mackenzie Bridge. My first address in Linden, I told the people in Linden that the government is seeking to sabotage both the Mabura to Linden Road and the Wismar Mackenzie Bridge. And they seem to forget that they had a jail talking about bringing the road through from Sue's Dyke so that they bypass Linden. We raised opposition to it. The British raised opposition to it, and they are compelled to do it. And now they went to Linden as if they're signing and it was their idea. Here, finally, you were compelled to do it because of the circumstance. And the project is a project of the APNU AFC. So, look, we have got to continue to put the ideas out there and do the work. We ain't gonna put all because we know they don't only thief from the treasury. They thief your ideas. So we holding back some. But we will continue. I expect that this year, a lot of the ideas we put into the budget debate last year will emerge as PPP. People-centered thing. Well, we can live with that. And there are some ideas that we still have, which we will roll out for elections.
Just for viewers' information, the Wismar Mackenzie Bridge, along with the highway to the east coast and the highway on the east bank, roads linking Mabura to Linden, and bridges linking Leg 1 to Wakenham, and the crossing at Kwakwani, among other a host of projects, more than 75 projects were approved by cabinet in 2016 under the chairmanship of President David Granger. And in the case of the Wismar Mackenzie Bridge, it was far advanced in terms of feasibility studies having been completed and discussions regarding funding being far advanced. So
it is important to remember here that Parajagdo said the road from Rupununi to Linden wasn't viable and he wasn't going to build it.
Right.
So that he's doing it now, you know, it's as a result of pressure.
Yes. But I want to, having said that, shift gears a little bit on the to go to the governance side. Time is really racing away here today. Back to your speech, your New Year's message. Again, I quote, "In 2023, we also witnessed further assaults by the PPP on governance and democracy. Its assault on our freedoms of expression and association reached even more dangerous heights as the recent court summons served on US-based political activist Rickford Burke starkly demonstrates." Then you go on to speak about the police force continue to be used as a political tool. The poor and powerless continue to be dispossessed of lands, cabinet ministers and PPP cronies persisting in flouting the law and escaping prosecution. And you made reference to the Dharamlal case and audit scams in the area of corruption. How do you see the parliamentary opposition confronting government on these issues as we go into 2024? And if you can briefly, very briefly, outline one or two measures that you intend to put in place as the new government of Guyana to fight this.
Let me start first with confronting the government. On the 20th of January, we will have a rally against the high cost of living at Burnham Court, which will be the beginning of a number of activities aimed at exposing and agitating against the government. We intend to hold a few symposia and a number of other things to educate people. An opposition task really is to expose, educate, agitate, and to put alternative ideas. So I wanted to say that would be done. Now, in one of my very early presentations, I said that just building roads for the sake of building roads didn't make sense. You need a plan to link the various regions and in the process open lands. The PPP's interest in the East Bank Road, you saw what it was.
Oh, yeah.
To deprive the African Guyanese in Mocha area. I mean, I just came down that road and look at people who are in the same line, PPP businessmen, who are in the same line with that Mocha dam.
Untouched.
And they're allowing them to expand. But in Mocha's case, they decided, and I've said it, in government, we will give back to people of Mocha those lands and ensure we regularize it. One of the first things we would need to do as a government is to have a unit in the Ministry of Housing that is specifically responsible for the regularization of lands and to deal with this question of ancestral lands. Because what you see, and they don't challenge this, the PPP is giving away all the lands to their members and supporters on the highway, and then talking about getting rid of those who are squatting. Then you know the approach. Pigeon Island had squatters, you regularize them. But any other place, you must get rid of them. You have to be blind to not see that in terms of governance, this government is not involved in good governance. They are involved in political and ethnic discrimination. But even as I say that, the ethnic discrimination is not in the interest of all the Indo-Guyanese community. It is in the interest of a few. And a lot of the Indo-Guyanese are facing the same challenges at the economic level that the African Guyanese. And that is why I've said this struggle has taken on more now of a class struggle, even though it will still have its ethnic dimension. Now, the police, once you compromise the police force by appointing somebody who didn't have the requisite qualification, character, etc., to be a commissioner of police, you were like immediately signaling to the entire police force you could become lawless, you could do as you like. Look and observe. Under the APNU, AFC, many of the policemen who there were serious allegations of corruption and illegality against were moved. A new corps of policemen were trained and placed there with investigative skills, and many of the crimes that occurred under the PPP were being solved. But then, what could you expect in terms of governance? Vice News came to Guyana. All of us sat and watched Jagdeo stutter when asked about bribery and corruption. And it was very clear that there are serious allegations against him for bribery and corruption. But the police could not investigate. The police fighting with Burke in America. They couldn't fight with Dharam Lal Hay. They took political instructions to ensure where there is a credible case, it went through the door. But like I said, Dharam Lal, they must know, rape does not have statute bar. And therefore, at some stage, he should pay for the alleged crime that he allegedly committed. So the point I'm making is that when it comes to governance, they have no interest in good governance. Concepts like accountability, transparency are out. Why would you change the law to ensure that the Public Accounts Committee meets only when you want it to meet? Because you know you are corrupt and that it will be manifest in the law. Now, I talk about losing land. Every day you can get a complaint. I went to farm. We're a PPP activist.
This is East Bank Essequibo?
Yes,
East Bank Demerara?
East Bank Essequibo. where it is alleged, and we put up a picture of Fowler with a gun on African Guyanese lands and telling people nobody could do nothing about it. Jack Dale put it there. Now, this is a man who should be charged and placed before the court. You are dispossessing people of land because of your links to the PPP. You can walk around with a machine gun or a shotgun and the police will do nothing about it. All of these are pointing in the direction of the absence of good governance, the maladministration of this country, and the incompetence and corrupt nature of the PPP. Add to that, their divisive nature.
The Rickford Burke issue. There are some persons out there who believe that the parliamentary opposition can do more in treating with this issue. People contend that there are rule of law violations. People contend that there are rights violations. People contend that there are actions that have been taken that are outside of the law. And therefore, the parliamentary opposition needed to be somewhat stronger in its representation on this issue. How do you react?
I will break the issue down to work. We need to be stronger on this question of violation of human rights. But like I've said, your strength comes from your mobilization of people, which we're doing. You're doing it in a society in which the PPP is instilling fear. Now, we have planned a number of activities that will seek to sensitize and agitate people. But I've always made the point, which I continue to make, as we move in the direction of agitation and protest, we must not give the PPP the opportunity to beat up Indo-Guyanese and then blame it on us. I always remind people of the Quindon Bacchus case, where it was legitimate. The evidence was that the police did what they did. But it was affected by the fact that when the session was coming down the road, the PPP paid some chaps out of Buxton. They become involved in attacking the Indo-Guyanese community, and then they paint it as if it's the APN. We will always have to take care to ensure that that doesn't happen. And this is not a new strategy of the PPP. Even when I was General Secretary in 1997, you had to be very, very careful with how you handle it. But that apart, we have to begin in a structured way to confront the PPP. One of the areas you confront the PPP is legally. But you know what the PPP has done over the years? The PPP has, through their non-granting of scholarships to people to do law, ensure that a lot of who become lawyers are children of the wealthy. And so a lot of the lawyers who before were emerging, and you had a lot of them that could help you, you're now left with a small group of lawyers that are prepared to stand up to the government. Some of them are doing it, we're doing it. But we also have got to recruit more legal minds to help with what is happening, because we need to use the legal system. We challenge the lawlessness with taken in court. They've been placed to act when legally should not have. The case of Rickford Burke is one that we have to be very, very careful with, because it is pointing in the direction of the government seeking to not only instill fear here, but overseas. And so that also has to be addressed. But like I've always said, people matter. And unless we mobilize the people, which we are doing, and organize them, then I would say there will always be scope for us to do more.
We have another 5 or 6 minutes remaining, Mr. Norton. You mentioned a particular activity planned for the 20th of January. a rally against the high cost of living. What are your expectations with respect to the outcome of this rally, and how do you see this rally as sort of a launchpad for what you have planned as a political opposition for the year 2024 moving forward?
The high cost of living is really one of the key issues affecting our people. And we believe it is necessary to mobilize them and organize them to make a clear statement on the high cost of living. We expect there, one, to agitate against the government for the treatment of this issue of the cost of living. We anticipate we will also put out there our views. And we also want to create a backdrop for the budget that is coming. To say to them in that budget, there is need for cost of living measures, etc. In the same vein, we want to begin to agitate, sensitize people and agitate against the government on this question of the high cost of living. And we hope in the process, the trade union will feel that they need to be activated, because the trade union really should be in the forefront of challenging this government inaction on the high cost of living, because it is the workers that this affect more. Sometimes people seem to believe that it is only the political party that should be battling. We'll engage the trade union movement in this process, because there is a role for labor here. And what the government has done over the years is really to destroy the labor movement. First marginalize them and then destroy them. The labor movement needs to be reactivated and to become part of civil society fighting against the high cost of living and the poor governance of the country.
Quickly, do you see a role here for the church as part of civil society?
Yes. Yes.
So this engagement that is ongoing involves both parliamentary and non-parliamentary opposition parties and civil society,
yes,
with the trade unions attached.
Yeah.
How successful are these talks going?
The engagements are now in the beginning stage. We have spoken to some of the people in the church. This week I'm hoping to engage the trade union, the various trade union around, so that we can have some involvement. We can involve them in it.
Here's a call to all Guyanese. All Guyanese. Every Guyanese is affected by the high, out of control cost of living. And the rallying call today is for you to come out and join with us on the 20th of January. I believe it is 5 o'clock at 5 p.m. at Burnham Court. That's it's Carmichael and Middle Streets. So we gather before 5 o'clock and the activity starts at 5. So wherever you are, start to put together your schedule to accommodate an event of immense importance, rallying against the People's Progressive Party administration on the 20th of January 2024 at Burnham Court, Carmichael and Middle Streets at 5 p.m., rallying against the high cost of living. Any closing words from you, sir, before we go?
My closing words are, Ghana should recognize that Ghana's gotten worse under the PPP with oil. They should recognize that Ghana is in crisis, every sector: education, petroleum, agriculture, you name it. They are all. I see the agriculture minister revising his targets to make him look like if he achieved anything. And I will say what I've said before. If Ghana is to grow, the PPP must.
Those are the last words for today's installment of Nation Watch. Today is 7th January 2024. Thank you very much, Mr. Aubrey Norton, MP, leader
Thanks
of the
for
People's National Congress and leader of the parliamentary opposition, for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Ladies and gentlemen, from wherever you join us, thank you very much for staying the course of the program. Nation Watch is on Watch for the Nation, a production of the People's National Congress Reform, and we hope to be with you every Sunday for the remainder of 2024. Until we meet again, God bless. Be on our roadways.